Okay, my Monday evening faithfuls. How you doing? How was your weekend?
It was interesting.
How so?
We had our first club training this weekend. So
How did that go?
it was first time I've had a structured training session. So with everybody that was there, it's hard to do with 30 or 40 people. So
Wow, good. Everybody with masks on or no masks?
the guys on the field without the mask, because we're doing just they were doing like mainly passing drills, that kind of stuff. So the distancing apart, but all the coaches at 85 or 90 degrees, it's kind of hard to keep that mask on and sweat your butt off.
Yeah, no, I get it. I had to do a similar one. I was up in Connecticut in the middle of August running a camp, and that was like 100 degrees, and the humidity was about 89, I think it was. So it was the mask, and then the beard is on top of that was just a lot of.
But at least you have something to absorb the sweat.
Yeah, right. Okay, so let's dive straight into this. What did we cover last week? What did we talk about?
Last week was the attacking principles. Let me see what you got there. Yeah, first receiver vision, the attacking principles, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so just looking at that attacking strategy, right? And so what are the three major ways that we can beat a defense?
Generally, we're either running, passing, or kicking the ball.
Yeah. So what are we looking to do with that? Are we looking to go? What was the three terminology things that we used?
Through, over, or around.
Perfect. And so what we're doing today is just a continuation of that, and we're just looking at what lines and angles players can run. So if we think about in attack, if we think about the ABCs of attack, we're looking at angle change, ball control, and communication, ABC, right? And so we're really looking at that angles today, and what lines can people run and how we can run an effective attack using some lines. So we're going to go back onto my my wonderful PowerPoint presentation, which actually was quite amusing because somebody actually asked what software I used to do all the diagrams on YouTube, and I was like, just PowerPoint. So what we're gonna use today is just talk about a switch or a deep switch, a running loop, unders, overs lines, what I call an X line and a Y option, and then also a load. Okay, and so this is probably going to take us maybe 15, 20 minutes. So a really short session today, just really trying to understand the lines and the shapes of players run. And then that's it. And then we're good for that. So we'll dive straight into it. And so if we can just talk around a switch to begin with, what do we know a switch to be?
Switch is basically a drastic change in direction between the two players.
Yeah. So what would be a deep switch?
I would say it's something that's before you reach to the line.
Yeah, perfect. So what we're looking at is, let's say our blue six has got the ball, okay, and they're on the edge here. And instead of taking it into contact, they can run a switch with the one. And typically what happens is you see that one, they'll go into contact, right? And so the six and the one will hit that line, they'll run a switch. So if we use the purple arrow, okay, we'll run towards the four and drag them across. You may hear that term a lot, drag. And the one will come back in here and look to go through that gap. So that's kind of what a switch is in the traditional sense. So a deeper switch or a deep switch would effectively be, we just come a little bit deeper and we have the one coming here, and effectively we change the angle this way. So now the one can actually move the ball away from the attack, from the defense. So what we're looking at is if we're just running a normal switch with the 6 and the 1, and we do it in the gain line on the contact area, that's what we're looking for. We're looking to take it straight to the gain line, looking to take it over the gain line. Whereas if we run the deep switch, what we're looking to do is actually allow play to continue by moving the ball on down into this direction over here. So really, really quite simple. Does that make sense? Do we understand what
Yeah,
I'm
I mean,
trying-
the first one, like you said, is basically taking it across, changing the direction, trying to get the gap between the 1 and the 6 in red, or taking it into contact. And then the deep switch is being able to change the side of the field. Basically, the ball has already run across one way, and now it's changing, going back, trying to get it to open up, stretch the defense out.
Perfect. So that's a switch and a deep switch, and we can use the deep switch to really increase continuity throughout the game, right? So we don't always have to take it to the gain line and make sure that we're taking it into contact. We can use that deep switch to keep the ball alive and put the defense under more pressure. Really easy, really, really easy. Deep switches don't happen that often in games, especially in 15s games. They happen a lot more in 7s. So when you get to the edge, it's a good way. Instead of, you may have seen that if we use this 3, for example, and that 3 comes in here and the red 3 comes across to try and tackle, you may hear the term pull out. So the 3 will pull out and then move the ball back in field. This is just a way for us to continue and drag the defense across and maybe open up these gaps so that then the ball can continue going down the line. So really, really easy. If we move on to the next one, what is a loop? What is that? What is a loop? I think pretty common terminology.
All right. Well, a loop, as I know it, would be 1 passing the 6, 2 kind of going to the right to draw the defense a little bit wider, with 1 coming through the gap and taking the ball back off a 6 on a short pass.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, right? We're just sitting there. We're literally just looking to loop around and come around the 6. I mean, so that's a really easy way to create an overlap. So if we look at this right now, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players. Okay, but right now it's 7 on 7. So the loop is just to create an extra number to come around that corner. And now we have an overlap. So really basic stuff there as well with the loop. And so if we move that across now and we actually look at a little bit more technical when we're looking at spacing, what would an unders or overs line be? So if we use the 5, the 7, and the 3, what would be an unders or an overs line? 5's got the ball. They're going to pass the 7. What would be an unders line?
To be honest with you, you got me there, because I've never used those kind of terminologies. For us, it was always straightforward, passing, miss, that kind of stuff. But
that's fine.
I assume it's passing to a player behind the unders.
Yeah, so not necessarily passing behind. So what we're looking to do is 5 is going to pass the 7, and if they run an unders line, what they're looking to do is run under this defender here. So they're looking to go through this gap. So it could be used as a short ball. And then if we run an overs line, what we're looking to do is run over the shoulder of the defender here. So the ball would come a lot wider.
All right. So one is a short, either short or long, as we used to call it. So
yeah, short.
All right.
So we're looking to go under the defense. If we look at that number 7, we're looking to go over the defense there. So if the 7 caught the ball in this position here, and then they had to pass to number 3, and number 3 says, yeah, I want the ball, I'm going to run an unders line, where would they run?
Well, he would be running the same thing off of the inside of his opposite number.
Yeah, so they run under the defense into this gap here. And if that defense then moved, okay, they'd probably run an overs line. So instead of it just allows the attacker to have a bit more of an option of where they actually want to run the line. What you may see as well, if we want to advance this to the next level, is we can run a in and out line. Okay, so if that 3 is there, we sorry, if the 3 is opposite the player, we can run like an into outline, which kind of looks similarly to this, where the 3 would then bite on that first movement of the other 3. So red 3 would bite, they'd come in here, and then they'd run that overs line. So we'd actually get the ball into that space. Similarly, we'd run an out to in line, which would look similarly like this. So that red 3 would come across, and then we'd shift back inside. So actually, like, really quite a simple concept, right? We either run under the defender or we run over the defender. Does that make sense?
All right. So yeah, yeah, I'm just getting accustomed to the new terminologies that you all. Back when I was still playing, it was like short or long.
Yeah, and look, this is like there's different terminology for everything, right? This is the terminology that I personally use, and this is the stuff that we use at ARPTC. And it's just any kind of terminology is a great way to get everybody on the same page. And so if we can understand, it's a lot of the things that we do as coaches and as rugby players is the same as everybody else, but New Zealand will call it different than America, and America will call it different than England, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not necessarily that it's wrong if it's a different terminology, it's just a different name for it. So there's no problems there.
All right.
I mean, like the fact that we're going to go into now, effectively what I call an X line. A lot of people call these different things. The reason I call it an X line is purely because it looks like an X. I'm quite a simple person, so it's easy. So if we were to look at the X line, let's take away these arrows. Okay, what we're actually looking at, let's say 5 has got the ball, and we have this kind of position in here. So 5's got the ball, and the 3 and the 7 are going to attack. What we're looking to do is to fix these 2 red defenders. So we want to be able to affect these and manipulate these 2 defenders. And the way we can do that is by running an X line. And so what I mean by that initially is the 3 would run this kind of line, and the 7 would run this kind of line. And so as you see, it looks like an X. Like I said, very simple person. This looks like an X, so let's call it an X line. What we're actually doing is we're actually trying to use this 3 as a decoy to have this 3 bite in, have the 7 bite in, so maybe the 5 can run around the corner, or if they can't do that, the 7 can come out the back and they manipulate this space here. If the defensive 3 does not bite, then what we can do is we can put the attacking 3 through that gap as well. So if this is the situation that we're in here, okay, the 3 stays out wide and they're marking the 7, then we can actually use this 3 to come through this gap here, and we use a really nice sharp shift, quick ball from the 5, hits them flat, bang, there we go. So that's kind of what an X line looks like. It's that kind of movement there, or we hit the 7 or we hit the 3, depending on what this player and this player do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it kind of it catches both players in a kind of no man's land, because if the 3 bites in, the 7 has to go around everybody to get outside.
Yeah, so and that's what we're trying to do, is we're just trying to create some space where there is no space originally. So just by changing the angle and changing the running line, it forces the 7 and the 3 in defense to actually make a decision. As soon as they make a decision, there's an opportunity for us to attack and exploit that space. And so what we're going to look at now is a little bit different. We're just going to look at it from a different point of view. So if we look at the 7, all right, we want to target this 7. We can also have our blue 7 coming around the corner and our 3 being in this position here. And what we can do is we can target this 7 and run a really hard short line up here. And then the 7 can come around the ball player and come through this gap here. So again, it's an X line, but the 7's actually coming from around the corner. So we're using the 5 as the ball carrier. They come around the corner and they're coming through this gap. So the 7 bites in, onto the 3, and then all of a sudden there's the gap that we have for the 7 to come through. And so you'll see X lines a lot in 15s, in the 15s game. And you'll also see a lot in rugby league as well. If anybody watches rugby league, it happens a lot in rugby league. That's pretty much the only lines they run is these, what they call blocker lines or slide lines. But effectively, it's just having that player run hard, fix those defenders. If those defenders bite, then we go out the back. If they don't bite, then we hit the short runner and we'll go through the front. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. So next one, we're going to talk about the Y option. And originally I called it a Y option because it came after X. Again, very simple. So what we're looking at here is a combination of an unders line and a loop. So what that looks like is 5 gets the ball, they'll hit 7 flat, and the 3 will run a hard line. 3 runs the hard line, targeting the 7. So the 7 then has to make a decision. The 5 will then loop around and come through this gap here. And so that's a combination of the loop and also the unders line. Okay, if the 3 runs that way, what does that allow the 5 coming around the corner to do? What does that allow the 7?
It allows us the 7 has to make a choice right there, whether he's taking the 7 ahead of him or the 5.
Yeah, so if the 3 runs that kind of angle, the 3 then actually blocks off the 5, and the 5 can come around and get through this gap.
Right.
And you'll see that happen a lot. Like every kind of all these 3 excuse me, all these 3 things that we're talking about, the X line, the Y line, and what we'll go on to next, the load. It happens pretty much in every single team and every single international and every single backline move or attacking move. These are the lines that the teams are running. So if you can execute these 3 lines effectively, you can pretty much build any kind of attacking platform from them. So if we actually go to what we will call the load is very simple. It's 2 players running directly straight and loading 1 defender. So the 7 and the 3 will go, okay, well, let's load this player here and let's load this player here. And we'll make the 7 make a decision. So what we mean by that is if the 5's got the ball, they say load 7, 7 and 3 run directly at the red 7. They either pick a choice. So if they go to this player here, then the ball simply goes across the face of the red 7 and hits the 3 through this gap. Okay. And similarly, if the 7 chooses to go to this wide player, then it's just a short pop pass to that 7 who flies through this gap. And this is a really very, very basic, but very hard thing to execute, because first of all, the 5 has got to watch the 7 and make sure that they're making the right decision. But then also they've got to be able to disguise the pass. So if they come over here, they've got to be able to make that long pass across the face without the 7 looking to intercept, right? As well as if the 7 then comes across, they've got to be able to disguise that pass for the 7 to come through this gap. So really, really basic lines of running, right? But really quite effective. When we look at them, we've got the switch or the deep switch. What is the purpose of the switch?
The switch is to change direction, but to go for the first gap, or take the ball into contact, bringing it back into play.
Yeah, and what's the purpose of a deep switch?
The deep switch is to change the direction still, but to bring the ball back and use it going out in the other direction across the field.
Excellent. What's the purpose of a loop?
To create the overlap.
To create an overlap when there isn't an overlap originally. what's the purpose of a unders line or an overs line?
The unders or overs to say similar thing to fix the opposition player, to create a gap for the other player to run through, basically.
Is that a X line or is that an unders or overs line?
That one that you have there is, to me, would be an unders or overs. Is either the inside or the outside shoulder.
Yeah, so that would be an unders line, and that would be an overs line.
Right.
When we look at the X line, we've got 3 players involved at all times. We've got the ball carrier and 2 runners. Okay, and so that 7 would then run it directly at the other 7, and the 3 would come around the corner into that space. And then the Y line, what's that a combination of? Which 2 lines?
The Y was same thing, 5 and 7, but the 3, well, now that you have it there, the 7 going for the outside shoulder of the opposite 7, and the 5 coming around the back of the 3 to go through the gap between 7 and 3.
Beautiful. And then finally, if we say we want to load, number 5's got the ball and we want to load number 2, what do we do?
2 and 4, 1 on the inside shoulder, 1 on the outside shoulder, running straight at the player and basically making him make a choice. He has to either go one way or the other.
Perfect. And that is, in a nutshell, running lines in attack, right? And so if you the next time you watch a game on the TV, maybe it's Australia, New Zealand are playing a lot at the moment. If you watch the running lines of the attack, you'll see these pop up in pretty much every time they get the ball, whether it's an X line, whether it's a load, whether it's a Y option off a set piece, whether it's a switch, whether it's a loop. It happens constantly over and over and over and over again. And if you can recognize these lines, you can start to put them together. So what we could do is we could run like the Y line off 1, 6, and 4, and then we could run an X line off the 2 and the 5. So the 1 comes around the corner, and then we can run the X line with the 2 and the 5, and we can start to put all these combinations together. And that's where these moves start to look really quite fancy. And it's like, oh, wow, how did we come up with that? And it just comes down to these moves that we've just talked about in these lines. So take them with you and make them as simple as possible. This is them in its purest form. And then you can just add layers to them and make it as complex and as fancy as you want it. Pretty simple, right?
Yeah, it's just kind of like I said, just different ways that they use it.
Yep. And
because I mean,
go on, carry on.
The X line could be in some way executed almost like a switch, depending on where the ball goes.
It could, and so that would happen with a really high skilled team. So you would be able to effectively, what you're talking about here is hit blue 7. They could then pass the ball to blue 3 as they coming around, but that's a very hard executing skill to try and manage when we look at that scenario here, right?
Yeah,
that's very difficult to actually try and run because that requires a lot of skill set.
Yeah, because the only other way that would work something like that wouldn't quite be as sharp. It would be almost like 7 heading for the middle between 3 and 7. Yeah, to force one of them to come in while 3 is running around the outside. So 3 has the outside. The red 3 has to make a decision as to whether he wants to in or out.
Yeah, and so with that as well, if that 7 does get the ball and they're here and they're looking to move the ball and pass the ball again, you could argue they could just run through the gap.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Not offhand. I mean, the only thing that I had a question on, and I know that's not something that was part of this deal, was going back to the first receiver, the decision making.
Yep.
You know, I didn't get a chance to email anything to you, but what I was trying to find out is, are there specific drills that you all use or that can be used to teach decision making?
I mean, I think the biggest thing around decision making is being able to spot, you know, the spaces not faces kind of conversation that we had. So decision making is best taught through games and playing multiple games and different types of games and multi-directional games and games with two balls and games with loads of space versus narrow space and more defenders than attack. More attack than defense, just like completely changing the constraints of the game all the time. It's very difficult to coach decision making, and it takes a lot of time. So as coaches, there needs to be a lot of patience because it's very difficult to execute these skills that we're talking about, have these running line options, and then actually pick the right decision or what we think is the right decision. What I would say is, that first receiver position that we talked about, you've got two options. It's pass early or run hard. And if we pass early, then if we look at it from those two things, then we take out all the other potential decisions that are happening. We'll pass the ball early and we'll run hard through it. So it's just being able to get creative with the games themselves. If that kind of answers.
Yeah, so basically you have to set up the game in such a way to make, basically it's not necessarily just for the first receiver, but everybody on the team to have to think about where the space is. So everybody is learning some kind of decision making at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things about the first receiver, right? They're only as good as the players around them. So if the players around them don't notice those spaces, it's going to be very difficult for them to actually move the ball into that space.
Yep.
It's like that, the Wayne Gretzky quote, which was, you know, a good player knows where the puck is, a great player knows where the puck's going to be. So knowing where that gap is and being able to put the ball into that gap is one thing. You've got to have the other players around you getting into that space as well.
Yeah, kind of seeing the space at the same time, kind of stuff. So you know where the ball is actually going to end up.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, you know, that's what makes the great teams great, is because they're able fluidly, and they're able to do that with ease. And a lot of the time, you'll see teams try these things, but it won't come off because their timing's off because they've seen it at different times.
All right.
Sorry, we're bang on 30 minutes again, so that's good. I appreciate you guys again for jumping on. My Monday evenings are much more entertaining with you guys in them. So thank you so much for keep jumping on, and let's continue to learn.
Well, thank you a lot for this. It's going a long way. I mean, I'm only now gotten into coaching because I only just started to give up. I still don't want to give up playing, but
we've all got to do it at some point.
Yeah, age forces you out slowly but surely. You know how that goes. But thanks for everything.
No problem. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thank you.